Just 2 weeks after the country suffered what I think is a devastating loss in November of 2024, when convicted felon Donald Trump was reelected to the Oval Office, I had the opportunity to take my 10-year-old daughter to France for the first time. And this had been a long-planned family trip, the focus of which was to be Paris, some of the surrounding areas, but we wanted to make sure that we took our little girl to Normandy. So we took the train to Bayeux, and we went to the D-Day beaches, Omaha Beach, Juno Beach, and we made sure that we stopped at the American Cemetery in Normandy because we wanted to show our daughter what sacrifice looked like. Real sacrifice, true sacrifice, what it looked like. And as we sit here today and we acknowledge and recognize that it's Memorial Day, I wanted to take just a few minutes to speak with you about the impact of that visit and why it weighs so heavily on my heart and my conscience right now. So as you know, we celebrate Memorial Day, and it is to, I guess celebrate's kind of a tough verb, right? We really use this day, and we should use this day to honor the memory of fallen American service members, those who paid the ultimate price in the defense of our nation, of our country. The ultimate sacrifice being the loss of life. And we also recognize the sacrifices of loved ones, next of kin, family members, support systems, those people that were there for those American service members who lost their lives in the defense of democracy. And I want to focus on D-Day, obviously, because I was in Normandy, and that was June 6, 1944, during World War II. And on D-Day, thousands of Americans died. And thousands of Allied forces died in order to liberate Western Europe. And D-Day on June 6 was the invasion of the Normandy beaches, and it was considered to be the beginning of the end of World War II because of the bravery and the courage of those young people, some of whom were still just children. And they gave their lives so that Hitler and the Nazis would be defeated. And on June 6, 1944, on D-Day, approximately 2,501 American soldiers were killed. A total of 4,414 Allied troops, including those from other countries, were killed, and more than 5,000 Allied troops were wounded. Now, this was a planned, calculated invasion. And when I went to the D-Day beaches, I was struck by the sheer expanse of the beaches. For those of you that haven't been, it's not just a small sliver of sand. It is this huge, wide expanse of sand and land. And it just emphasized in my mind how absolutely exposed and vulnerable these Allied soldiers were when they landed on those D-Day beaches. They were picked off by German soldiers so easily. These German soldiers were situated at the top of the cliffs, and they just gunned down and mowed down all of these young people. And it was terrifying to see yourself so small in this huge, wide expanse of beach, and to think how absolutely horrific it must have been to have to go through that experience on June 6th. And it only took weeks. I want to emphasize this. It only took weeks for Hitler's forces to take over France. And if you think about how quickly the Nazis were able to gun up and gin up support, and how quickly they were able to forcibly take over countries, you have to stop yourself and ask why. Why was it so possible for somebody like Adolf Hitler to be able to do that? And there's so much that other historians could do better than me to explain it. But I think about climate and environment, and I think about the right conditions for that type of mentality to take hold, that type of horrific philosophies to take hold. And I think about how helpless France must have felt, and other countries must have felt after they were invaded by the Germans. And so After we spent time at those D-Day beaches, we wanted to make sure that we made it to the American Cemetery in Normandy. And the American Cemetery, it is 172.5 acres. It's on the cliffs in Normandy overlooking the water. It's one of 14 permanent American World War II military cemeteries built on foreign soil by the American Battle Monuments Commission. And when I learned about that, I was struck. So it's a governmental arm called the American Battle Monuments Commission. And it's an American cemetery. It's American soil that our fallen have been buried in. And it reminded me of this most powerful quote by Colin Powell. Colin Powell, our first African-American United States Secretary of State, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 4-star general. And this is what Colin Powell said. He said, over the years, the United States has sent many of its fine young men and women into great peril to fight for freedom beyond our borders. The only amount of land we have ever asked for in return is enough to bury those that did not return. So the World War II cemetery in France holds the graves of nearly 9,400 war dead, 9,400 war dead. And there are nearly 1,600 names on the walls of the missing. This is hallowed ground. This is a hallowed day, Memorial Day. Yes, we enjoy it as a federal holiday. People have the day off. They're doing barbecues and going swimming, and they're enjoying air and sea shows. But this is a hallowed day. And the irony is you celebrate and you enjoy this day because other people paid the ultimate sacrifice so that you could have the luxury and the privilege of this day. And one thing we wanted to make sure we did when we were at the American Cemetery, my husband insisted on this, and I'm so grateful that he did, is at around 4 or 5 p.m., depending upon the season, they play taps and they lower the American flag. And as you listen in just utter silence to taps being played, and you watch that flag being lowered, you can't help but feel humbled by the sacrifice, to feel grief for the loss, and to just feel the utmost respect and admiration for those that have the courage that I don't have and others don't have to be able to serve an entire country, but to also serve a purpose and to serve a philosophy of the defense of democracy. It is something that is profound to me and should be equally profound to you. So, of course, today, convicted felon Donald Trump, twice impeached, quadruple indicted, found liable for sexual abuse, civil fraud, defamation, and having been convicted of 34 felonies, that Donald Trump, purportedly the president of the United States, instead of honoring how hallowed and important and serious Memorial Day is, he issues this screeching Truth Social post in all caps wherein he attacks former President Joe Biden, who's not the president anymore. He attacks the judges and he attacks his political opponents. No mention of the loss of thousands of lives, no mention of their sacrifice, just this horrific screed that he pushes out. And it just really showed the lack of character that Donald Trump has. And then over the weekend on Saturday, Trump delivered the commencement speech or address at the United States Military Academy, also known as West Point, one of the most respected military institutions in our country. And you have these young, bright, incredibly smart, very talented young men and women that are about to embark on the next stage of their lives. And they hear rambling, ranting, incoherent, dementia-laden, just diarrhea of the mouth from Donald Trump. It was such a keen example of his lack of mental acuity and his lack of competency. He has no faculties that are left uncompromised. And during that speech, he talked about trophy wives, the destruction of DEI, no trans, and how this is what I wanted to read to you all. He said things like this, quote, "The job of the United States Armed Forces is not to host drag shows," which, by the way, is not true. It's a lie. "The job of the U.S. Armed Forces is not to host drag shows, to transform foreign cultures, but to spread democracy to everybody around the world at the point of a gun." That's what the commander-in-chief thinks is what the U.S. Armed Forces is supposed to do. Quote, "Spread democracy to everybody around the world at the point of a gun." That is not what the Allied forces did during World War II to liberate Europe. That is not what our American soldiers died for during World War II, World War I, frankly, in order to spread democracy at the point of a gun. And to add insult to injury, although frankly, I don't know if I was a graduate of West Point, if I wanted to shake his hand, but the tradition is the president of the United States shakes the hands of the graduates. And Trump just said, screw it, I'm not going to do it. And he just left. I want to highlight something that is really critical at this point in time and at this moment. And I talk about we need to save ourselves. I say this to you all the time. I'm going to emphasize it right now. I want to talk about the French Resistance. The French Resistance, I learned so much about it when I was in France. I urge you to read up on it because historically it is so inspirational and it is something that we need to focus on, ladies and gentlemen. The French Resistance is going to give us our inspiration and give us some guidance on what we're going to be doing. So one of the things I saw was the flag. It is the French Resistance flag. It is the Cross of Lorraine. It was chosen by General Charles de Gaulle as the symbol of the resistance. Charles de Gaulle is not just the name of an airport. He was president of France, and he was one of the leaders of the resistance, if not the leader of the resistance. And the French resistance sprang to life during World War II, during the Nazi occupation of France by Nazis and Hitler's armed forces. And the French resistance was fascinating. It was made up of everyday people from different walks of life with different educations, different jobs, different occupations, no jobs, no occupations. But what they did was they stood up to the fascism. They stood up to Nazis. They stood up to Hitler. That's what they did. And they were a collection of groups. And not only did they stand up to the Nazis, but they also stood up to what? Vichy France, the collaborators of Vichy France. That's who they also stood up to. And the French resistance was incredibly powerful. They were conducting guerrilla warfare and they were spreading information, the truth. They spread the truth through local underground newspapers so that the truth would always come out. That is what they did. The power of the truth is what inspired the French resistance. And they were small but mighty. If you notice the quote in my social media posts, it's a Shakespeare quote. Though she be but small, she is mighty. She is fierce, right? That is what I think of us. I think of us as the resistance. We are small, but we're not. We're actually much bigger than people know. But we are mighty and we are fierce because we are fierce in our dedication to the ideas and the beliefs of what we know to be good and true. About 420,000 Americans died in World War II. Just stop for a second to think about that. 420,000 Americans died in World War II. They died to defend democracy. They died to fight Nazis and fascism. They sacrificed for something that was happening somewhere else across the globe because they felt so strongly about the belief system of democracy and how important it was to stop the spread of fascism before it overtook the entire world. Charles de Gaulle said the following speech when he was in exile in London, and he said this amazing speech, and there's a line I wanted to share with you. He said the following: "Whatever happens, the flame of French resistance must not be extinguished and will not be extinguished." Folks, you can substitute American for that. Whatever happens, the flame of American resistance must not be extinguished and will not be extinguished. We are the resistance. We are the ones that are going to ensure that democracy will prevail. Our resistance can be whatever we want it to be, whatever we are comfortable in it being. I have said we cannot judge others for what their resistance is. We must accept what others feel comfortable to do, because at the end of the day, it is us. It is us. We will save this country from somebody like Donald Trump. So on this day, on this very hallowed, important day, Memorial Day, celebrate the lives of your loved ones. Remember and honor those that have fallen, the family of those that have fallen because of those sacrifices that were made. And remember that the resistance flame is strong, and that because we are one unified power, we will prevail. I want to leave you with the following. It is the video of taps being played at the American Cemetery in Normandy as our flag is lowered. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I'll see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.